We have got a juicy 14-game slate on tap for tonight in MLB DFS, and I think that allows us to get upside a pitcher without totally breaking the bank. As you know, I am more than okay with allocating a lot of salary towards pitchers, sometimes to my own detriment, but for tonight, I think we can save a little bit. We're not going to true value plays, but my top two pitchers both have salaries at 10,000 or lower. So I feel like because of the options, we can allow ourselves to spend down a bit without being totally dumb and ignoring really good options on tonight's slate. We're going to break down who those options are, why I like them, where we can spend those savings at stacks, and much more to get you ready for Tuesday night over on FanDuel.com. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, here to break down Tuesday's 14-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for today. The one weather note could be a difficult one at Wrigley Field. Drizzle is in the forecast all day there for the Cubs and the Pirates. It's also just 63 degrees in Chicago, so I'm not sure if they'll play. If they do, I would downgrade bats, and it's definitely a risk because that game may not be good to go, but it's a drizzle. Maybe they play through it. Either way, would downgrade batters for the Cubs and the Pirates at Wrigley Field. We'll dive into the pitching options and stacks and much more in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcast, because later on today, we're going to have our PGA DFS preview for the U.S. Open via myself and Brandon Gadula. That will also be live over on the FanDuel YouTube page at noon Eastern. So if you want to tune in, check out our thoughts on the U.S. Open, go to the FanDuel YouTube page, noon Eastern. You can also check a replay there after the fact. Make sure you tune in, see what we're looking at there for what should be a pretty fun week on the golf side of things. So subscribe to the FanDuel YouTube page or the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. If you like what you hear, leave us a thumbs up on YouTube or a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Have you ever started a player in your fantasy football lineup who scores 3 points while someone on your bench puts up 20? Well, with FanDuel's NFL Best Ball drafts, you don't have to worry about that. Draft your team, and each week, the highest scoring lineup from your roster will be used as you battle for first place all season long. Leagues can be free to play or for money and range from 3 to 12 players. The NFL season will be here before you know it, so head over to FanDuel today and get in on the action. Age and residency restrictions apply. Pitching preview for this Tuesday main slate. George Kirby comes in with the highest salary on FanDuel. His salary for tonight is $10,800, followed by Zach Wheeler at $10,600. Corbin Burns on the road against the Twins, $10,200, with Hunter Brown at $10,000 flats. Pablo Lopez facing Burns, $98,000. Alex Cobb, $96,000. We got Chris Bassett also at $96,000. Max Scherzer's $94,000. Tanner Bybee, $91,000. With Edward Cabrera, Joe Musgrove, Jack Flaherty, and Tony Gonsolin as the others at $8,000 or higher. Now, I do think we have leeway to save a bit of salary for tonight. We can get quality pitchers in really nice matchups in doing so. I'm going to start things off with a high floor matchup with a high upside pitcher. So hopefully we can blend those two together to get a real combo of floor and upside here. That's Hunter Brown against the Nationals. Again, it is a good matchup for floor because the Nationals against righties, their current active roster has an 84 WRC plus with a 124 ISO. They never draw walks, and the one downside here is they just don't strike out very much. It's actually below a 20% strikeout rate, and that does hurt Brown's upside. But he has the upside in himself, and that does matter as well. Brown has pitched well pretty much all year, but in his past 6 starts specifically, he has started to lean hard into his four-seam fastball, and it has looked great with a 2.79 skill interactive ERA, 31% strikeout rate, and just a 23% fly ball rate allowed. Now, we have seen some runs cross the plate in that time because Brown's ERA is 4.81, but I don't think that's a huge concern personally, given the small sample. He has gotten 8+ strikeouts in 4 out of 6 games. So I think when you combine the fact that ERA can be fluky in a small sample with the fact that the Nationals are not the world's most prolific offense against righties and the strikeouts have been there, I'm okay being a bit dismissive of the somewhat poor results this time. He did face the ace twice in the sample, so facing up against another non-elite offense, and in those, 19 strikeouts, 3 earned runs across 13 innings. And he's also at home, which is a good park for strikeouts. So once you account for the low strikeout matchup, I do have Brown projected for 6.8 strikeouts. That is not as high as Corbin Burns, not as high as Max Scherzer, not as high as some other guys, but when you factor in how few earned runs he's likely to allow in this game, I think it's enough to make Brown the top pitcher on the main slate. His salary, again, $10,000. You're not paying too much to get there. So to me, Hunter Brown, a really fine option for DFS for tonight. The other pitcher I like in what I would view as a plus matchup, at least for right now, is Max Scherzer. He is facing the Yankees. There is still no Aaron Judge here, and that roster is just not the same without him. The active roster on the Yankees has a 90 WRC plus against righties. They're not a high strikeout team, but they also don't walk a bunch. And what that does is it allows starting pitchers to go deep in the game against them, which we've seen a lot against the Yankees already so far this year. And Scherzer's pitching better now. He's had some hiccups, but since coming off the IL, he has a 3.16 skill interactive ERA, 29% strikeout rate, and 10% walk rate. He's doing that while letting up just a 35% hard hit rate. So the ball's in the air a lot, but not typically well struck. Scherzer did let up 5 earned runs to the Braves last week, but that was on the road against a tougher offense, and he did get 10 strikeouts there. Across the past 3 starts, Scherzer's strikeout totals are 8, 9, and 10 respectively, and the swinging strikes have been there too. So I think, based on this, that Scherzer is slowly trending back up. He's facing a banged-up offense, and his salary is back down to $9,400. I don't think Scherzer is the top guy straight up. In a vacuum, I do like some other guys more. But once you add in the savings with Scherzer's salary at 94, I'm okay putting him second behind Brown for tonight. So to me, after accounting for matchup and salary, my top 2 pitchers for tonight will be Max Scherzer, number 2, with Hunter Brown, number 1. As for the top value play, I like Jack Flaherty quite a bit, which, might not go great, but I think the process is here. He does need points to hang with those top studs like Scherzer, Brown, et cetera, but I think Flaherty can't get them. He's facing the Giants at home, and the Giants are a very good offense, so I don't like targeting them, but they will strike out. They have a 24% strikeout rate against righties. Flaherty has a couple of routes to strikeouts beyond that matchup. The first one is pitch count, because Flaherty has gone 100-plus pitches in 5 consecutive starts. I have him with the second highest pitch count projection on the slate as a result. And that does matter quite a bit. The second route beyond pitch count is that Flaherty is just starting to get more strikeouts overall. He's been throwing fewer cutters his past 6 starts. In that 6-start sample, his strikeout rate is 24%, which is not a big number, and it's in line with what he was doing before this stretch. But that's with 4 of the 6 starts coming on the road, and 1 was against a super low strikeout Cleveland team. If you look at one of his home starts against a higher strikeout team, kind of similar to the Giants, that was against the Brewers, and he had 10 strikeouts there. So I think Flaherty has upside. He's also getting really good batted ball data. He has just a 27% hard hit rate allowed with a 28% fly ball rate in this time. So the matchup is not ideal. The Giants are definitely a team that can't hurt a righty, but the combo of a high pitch count and the good batted ball data is pretty attractive here. I have Flaherty projected for 6.1 strikeouts tonight. That is close enough to the studs for me to justify using him, especially with his salary down to $8,300. So Flaherty, at least a consideration for player pools for tonight based on, I think, what he could do in a high strikeout match, even if it's not really a fantastic one, regardless. Let's dig in now to the stacks and talk about options as far as this. And I would say pitcher is stronger than stacking for tonight, in large part because there are a lot of good pitchers. But let's start things off here with the Astros facing Patrick Corbin tonight. And we've gotten away from stacking against Corbin, haven't been as eager to be here recently. But there are still some cracks in his profile right now, which I think allows us to stack Houston here. Corbin obviously struggled to start the year, but he's really turned things around dating back to late April, early May. And as a result, Corbin's ERA for the Phillies season is back down to 4.89. But he's done some of that against softer competition He's also still letting up a lot of hard contact. Across his past 7 starts, Corbin has been throwing more four-seam fastballs, and his hard hit rate in that 7-start sample is 50%. Very high number. It's a lot of line drives, so like if you look at his fly ball rate, it's not super high, but it's not because he's getting a lot of ground balls. I think Corbin's gotten by in part because of the competition he has faced. Faced the Tigers and the Royals in this time, and even against the Royals, he let up 6 earned runs. Dodgers hit a couple homers against him. I think the Astros could do that too. They're still not back to the offense they were. Their WRC plus against lefties is 105, but I think we should be on them for tonight based on Corbin's issues, based on the bodies they've got right now with Altuve being back. I think there's enough here to be okay with the Astros. I haven't seen a lot from Alex Bregman. We have not seen a lot from Alex Bregman so far this year against lefties as far as the results go. 72 WRC plus and 094 ISO. But those numbers are very fluky in small samples against lefties. So WRC plus, not going to put a lot of weight in that. ISO does stabilize a lot more quickly, so you could put more stock in that. But in this time, Bregman has a 56% fly ball rate against lefties and a 7% strikeout rate. And those numbers do stabilize pretty quickly. And the power numbers against righties for Bregman are fine. So I'm guessing it's really the product of a small sample. Bregman should improve against lefties as the year goes along. So I think getting him tonight at $3,100 makes a lot of sense. So I'll be there for tonight for sure. Feel okay about him. And would be willing to go there within Astro stacks. Altuve is kind of the gem right now with no Yordan Alvarez. So Bregman, the way to save salary beyond Altuve. Now, we're not typically going to find ourselves stacking or wanting to stack both sides of a game featuring the Reds and the Royals. Not going to happen super often. Neither team has a WRC plus above average against the opposing pitcher's handedness for tonight. But I do think we want to be here, and I also do like both sides quite a bit. So I prefer the Reds. We'll start with them, then we'll get to the Royals after that. The Reds are facing Jordan Lyles, who is 0-10. Pitching records are stupid, and we should not put weight in them, but this one is there for a reason. And it hasn't gotten better, even as Lyles' velocity has increased. That has been the case for Lyles his past 7 starts. In those 7 starts, he has let up a 50% fly ball rate still, with a 17% strikeout rate and a 5.09 skill interactive ERA. He has let up 4+ earned runs in all but one game in that stretch. His ERA, 7.51, and those have been against some bad offenses. His past 3 starts have come against the Nationals, the Rockies, and the Marlins. Now, the Reds aren't terrible. They have a 97 WRC plus against righties, and now they're a pretty fun team with Ellie De La Cruz being up there. So I feel good about them against Lyles for tonight, and the salaries are high for the Reds, so it can be tough to stack here, but I do like them quite a bit, and that's part of why I think we have incentive to save a bit of pitcher when we can. De La Cruz is not the only guy here we can feel pretty fun about. It does help that the Royals are not great at stolen base prevention. Teams haven't run a ton on them overall, but when they have run, they've done so pretty successfully. Could be a product of playing the AL Central. Not a lot of teams that run in the American League Central, but the Reds do. So looking at the Reds, I think that their base runners will have the green light here. So that's the appeal in De La Cruz, obviously, but also Matt McClain can run, Spencer Steer, Jonathan India, TJ Friedel, all those guys will run. Friedel's a value play. Stuart Fairchild, low salary. Will Benson, low salary. I think all those guys are fine if you are looking to save some salary on this team. Friedel's 29. It's not a huge value, but Fairchild and Benson a bit lower. And Fairchild actually has a barrel in 3 consecutive games. So the Reds, to me, pretty fun and a team that I want to be on for tonight. Other side of that game is the Royals against Brandon Williamson, and this might be a tougher sell because the Royals offense is worse than the Reds and not as fun, but this is a pretty good matchup. We talked about Williamson last week before he faced the Dodgers, and he struggled again there. He let up 6 earned runs across 5 2/3 innings with just 3 strikeouts. The biggest thing has been hard contact for Williamson. He's letting up a 48% hard hit rate with a 13% barrel rate across 5 starts. He's let up multiple barrels in all but 1 start. And not all of those came against stellar offenses either. Because he faced the Brewers and the Rockies, 2 teams that have been pretty rough against lefties this year. He did do better in those games, but the hard contact broadly was still there for those. The Royals at an 87 WRC plus against lefties. It is pretty bad, but it's also not as bad as the Rockies, at least. So I think we have enough here to justify stacking the Royals. We'll just want to do so while being selective with the guys we include in those stacks. Bobby Witt is obviously fine. Salvador Perez hasn't hit lefties so far this year, but kind of similar to Bregman, where the overall numbers say that Perez should get there eventually. Edward Olivares has some good pop. I don't think he's in the projected lineup on FanDuel, but he'll play. It's a lefty, so he should be out there. Michael Garcia tends to shift up in the order against lefties too, and he's willing to steal bases on them. MJ Melendez, decent numbers against lefties despite being a lefty, so I wouldn't roster just anybody in this lineup against the lefty, but I think there are enough guys here to get us a full stack. So both the Reds and the Royals, a fun stack in that same game in Kansas City for tonight. Let's shift now to things to watch. Two teams that would have been flirting with the top three for stacks, if not for lower temperatures in their games, were the Rays and the Cubs. I still like the Rays and will stack them. They're facing Hogan Harris here. He's a lefty who struggles with walks, and the Rays obliterate lefties. So the Rays, I didn't quite get them in the top three because of the park factor, but did give it consideration because the matchup is good. Park is good, or Park is not good, but the offense is very good. The Cubs, again, may not be able to play because of rain. It's just 63 degrees there, so whatever. But I do like the matchup with Luis Ortiz. So if they play, I'd rank the Cubs below the Rays and below those top three stacks, but they'd be at least worth digging into for sure. Finally, I don't know who the Rangers are starting today. John Gray got scratched. Sounds like Cody Bradford may be the starter. He's done a good job with hard contact suppression down in AAA, but that hasn't translated to the majors as of yet. So if it is Bradford, I would definitely consider the Angels, but I'm not sure if it will be yet. So give thought to the Angels if it is Cody Bradford, bumping up their righties there, but and make sure to check back on the Rangers starter later on to see who that indeed is. Dinger calls here on this Dinger Tuesday over at FanDuel Sportsbook. The boring one, I feel like anytime I get the chance to put Ellie De La Cruz in this, I should probably just do it. And I get the chance for today. Facing Lyles, who sometimes does have pretty weird platoon splits, but we're going to do it anyway. Ellie De La Cruz, we're going to make him the boring home run call for today. The fun one, other side of that game, let's go Edward Olivares. Olivares has good hard hit numbers, good barrel numbers, and now, or good expected WOBA, I should say. If you look at his expected WOBA versus actual WOBA, facing a lefty for today should probably bat fifth or so for the Royals. So I like a lot of that. So we'll go with Ellie De La Cruz and Edward Olivares in that KC game as the dinger picks for this Dinger Tuesday. That's all we got here for the solo shot for this Tuesday. As mentioned, we are back with you later on today talking some PGA DFS for the U.S. Open. Again, to get that, make sure you check out the FanDuel YouTube page, noon Eastern, or after the fact on the FanDuel YouTube page there, or over on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down Wednesday's slate. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.